Hey, everybody, we are back. Just want to say thank you for all the support, all the well wishes. Please download the latest podcast on YouTube and Spotify. It helps out with the algorithm. You can always find us on Instagram at the Ryan Poley Podcast. Up next is a dear friend of mine and an amazing dude, Jim Myers. Jim was the food columnist for the Tennessean paper here in Nashville and now is the GM for Elliston Place Soda Shop. He has amazing insight on Nashville food scene, and we had a great chat, and I hope you enjoy it. The blogs, the influencers, the eaters and Grubhubs and Thrillists, they've kind of taken over journalism, and it's a lot of clickbait.
It's all clickbait.
Yeah. And no one's giving no one is coming in 3 or 4 times over a 3 to 4 month, 5 month period, and then writing an honest critique of what's happening where a restaurant owner or chef can read it and be like, okay, we obviously have some things to work on.
Yeah.
They like this. Let's lean into that. Let's kind of fix these problems with service or over seasoning or under seasoning. And, hopefully they're going to come back within a year or 2 years and review us again.
Right.
And
well, those days are gone.
so gone, man. Yeah.
I mean, they've been gone except in the really major markets that can afford it.
Right. Like the New York Times.
Yeah.
Who's doing reviewing for the LA Times? Was it Jonathan?
Well, I
Gold?
know he was.
Yeah.
But he died.
Mm-hmm.
So Bill Addison's one of the people there.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it turned into this, I call it the school of sins of omission. Meaning everyone just writes something nice about everything.
Correct.
Which doesn't help anyone.
Right. But as a journalist, there's a way to go about that. There's a way to give an honest critique and then not be mean or slanderous.
No, you never want to come off as, and again, we can talk about this.
Right, we are.
Oh, are we?
Keep going.
Yeah. No, I mean, you never want to be an asshole. Mm-hmm. You never want to come off as just a complete jerk who has an axe to grind. Mm-hmm. You want to be truthful, but critical. Because I think the thing that's gotten lost in restaurant criticism is, a lot of things happen with the rise of the chef and the celebrity chef.
Correct.
And the personalities. We would mention chefs, but we didn't speak about them the same way. And it got to the point where the chef became more important than the restaurant in many cases. But with that cult of personality comes this kind of boosterism, which journalism should never be. It's why people in towns get mad at sports writers, or used to, because they go, why do you say such crappy things about my team? Well,
it's tribalism.
Because even though you don't want to be the homer, the guy who is afraid to criticize the Titans or the Predators, because someone has to say what no one else is saying. This guy's terrible or whatever. And the same thing crept into food journalism because with the rise of food television, more people got into food and cooking than ever before and became engaged and became swept up in this cult of personality with chefs. Mm-hmm. Well, they didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And they forgot that a true restaurant criticism, your job is a consumer advocate. And that's the part that got lost.
Right.
That your job isn't to be a cheerleader for the restaurant, though you can if you like it and you appreciate what they're doing, but your job is to let a person who may be spending a huge chunk of their paycheck an honest appraisal of what to expect. Mm-hmm. And does everything seem to be working in concert with the identity that restaurant is trying to create for itself? So it's why you can be softer on a diner than you would on a fine dining.
3-star Michelin, right?
Yeah.
But do you think that type of journey? I feel like it was a slow-moving iceberg with the rise of Yelp, with bloggers, with independent freelancers. influencers, Facebook.
Yeah.
Everyone is a critic now. Everybody goes to a restaurant and, we notice it as like, that guy was just here an hour ago and he already left a review, whether it's good or bad.
Right.
It's everybody feels entitled to say something. Sometimes I go to dinner and I'm with my friends and we're having great conversation. The food was okay. I don't have an opinion sometimes. Right. And they sent out extra things, or I knew the chef, and I just don't have an opinion because I'm caught up in the experience of going to dinner with my friends, having drinks, having great food. The service is there, but not intrusive. Like, that's good service.
Right.
And we left, and this was an amazing time because we had amazing conversation, and there wasn't like anything terrible where we wanted to spit it out. And I don't have an opinion on the meal other than it was a great experience all around.
Sure.
And I feel like people have to give an opinion now because there's outlets for them to voice their opinion, to say whatever it is that they want to say.
Yeah.
And I feel that's where the food critic, real journalism kind of got stifled, as no one is turning to Jim Myers anymore to say what's good and what's not.
Right.
Or to help guide me in my decisions of making a choice for reservations, when I could just go to Yelp and I could just read all the bad things people are saying and, laugh about it or whatever.
Yeah. So a few things in that happened. You're right. It was the rise of UGC, user generated content. Mm-hmm. Zagat's was one of the first.
Zagat's was
to
great.
Do that.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But they felt, I was never a huge fan of Zagat's because I'm not a fan of ratings by committee, mm-hmm. of statistics. But they did it, I think, as well as you can do it. The rest of it became, whether it was Yelp or whatever, mm-hmm. became a free-for-all.
Yeah.
Anyone can leave. Anyone who has an axe to grind and
you just make a fake account and just start writing bad reviews about everybody.
I don't like that guy.
Yeah.
And can do it. And there's very little accountability there.
Right.
So the individual restaurant critic, who you may not agree with, but if that person is consistent and professional with what they do, you get a sense of what they're going to like or not like. Mm-hmm. And you get a sense of whether I trust their opinion, so that when they do review a new restaurant, it matters to you what they say. If you like them, you go, okay, I'm going to try this place. If you say, oh, this guy always doesn't like this, well, I like that, so I'm not going to listen to that.
But you could read between the lines with that also. Like, you can see that a critic is more geared towards, let's just say, like, ethnic food.
Right.
And you could see in the reviews that if you follow along enough, that these are the things that this person likes. And I think a critic can't get away from that. Like, you're going to be attracted to the things that you like a little bit more, and you're going to still give an honest opinion about it.
Right.
If you're reviewing 3 or 4 Indian restaurants a year and you're giving it praise, even though it's well deserved, you could see that they like Indian food as opposed to something else. So you could kind of base your own judgment and opinion on that.
You can.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Right.
And
that's no fault of the journalist either.
No, but you should be able to write intelligently,
right,
about anything that you try. Mm-hmm. And you can't just say, you can't, there are critics who say, well, I hate shellfish, or
I'm allergic to shellfish.
Or if you have an allergy, or if you just don't like it,
right?
You shouldn't do that.
Right.
You should be able to try everything and tell, is this good? Is this what it's trying to be, or are they doing a riff on a classic? And does this work? Is this interesting?
Right. Let me ask you this: if you have a shellfish allergy as a food critic, how are you going to go and rate a seafood tower at a steakhouse or a seafood based restaurant? How does that work?
I guess the only thing you can do is bring people you
trust,
and trust, whose palate you trust,
and
go, how is it?
That's smart. Yeah.
But but you know, you try and avoid that too.
So you were at the Tennessean a long time. How did you originally start writing about food?
It's a great question. I was at City Search before that, and you may not remember City Search. They were one of the first people, this was 20 plus years ago, who got into the city guide business in the very early days of the internet. AOL had digital cities. Microsoft had, I don't even remember what their version was, and then City Search got in, and Nashville was one of the original cities. And the office was staffed by what I now know are all extraordinary people who've gone on to do amazing things. That time, there's a bunch of people out of college creating these profiles for everything in the city, restaurants, public service, whatever. And I was the only one who knew anything about food and cooking at that time.
So where did that come from then?
Traveling.
Okay.
Traveling, growing up in kitchens of friends of mine. I had a lot of people of different ethnicities growing up in Milwaukee. And I'll never forget walking into my Italian friend's house. You'll get a kick out of this. Because prior to high school, my mom was straight out of the 50s.
Midwest.
Yeah. Casseroles with Campbell's soup.
Yeah, same. That's how we grew up too.
I mean, she cooked out of different, because we moved around. We lived in different places. And she'd cook out of junior league cookbooks. But
you always had a home cooked meal though.
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
So she was a good cook.
Right.
But there was nothing exotic about it. And I'll never forget walking into Jim Balistreri's kitchen. Balistreri was a big name. A lot of the groceries and produce vendors were Balistreris. There were also the mafia Balistreris. So the gamut. But walking into that little kitchen in that great house and seeing, the can of olive oil in there, this big.
Yeah, the tin. Yeah.
The tin can of olive oil.
Yeah.
Huge. And all I could think is, what the hell does someone use that much olive oil for? It was totally foreign to me because I did not grow up. And so then I'd hang out in their kitchen and other mom's kitchens. And then when I traveled, I just fell in love with food. And you eat something and you try it. And especially when you're traveling to other countries, or you taste something and you can't immediately identify what is that. So you research it. So I would always try and take a cooking class whenever I traveled. And that's how I learned cooking and foods, and found I had a decent palate, that I could identify things and pull stuff forward. And so that's how I got into it. And then ended up at City Search and did it at City Search, went to the Tennessean.
How long were you at City Search for?
3-4 years. And then go to the Tennessean as their longtime restaurant critic, Thayer Wine, was ready to retire. So it was right place, right time.
Great.
I had already written some feature stories about food or chefs at the time, and stepped into her role. And that's when it was the old school, anonymous.
Yeah.
Paid for all our meals. My picture wasn't published. No one knew what I looked like. And you'd do the 2 visits. I mean, it was the Tennessean, so the budget wasn't the same as the New York Times. And do it the old school way. Take some people with you so you can try a lot of different things. You're going to have this, you're going to have this, you're going to have this.
Right.
We're going to order way too much food and just enjoy yourselves. Let me try everything.
When do you think, we're kind of jumping around, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but when do you think that type of journalism started to fall off? or is it have to do with budgets for the newspaper? It's a lost leader.
It was a huge part of it was just restaurant or newspaper budgets were shrinking.
Yeah. And then the internet came along and shrunk the budgets even more.
And newspapers were very slow to understand the internet.
Mm-hmm. Still are.
And still are.
Yeah.
How it really works.
Mm-hmm.
And so
is Congress.
So they have a lot of industries were caught.
Yeah.
And so the budgets started to go. Because I left the Tennessean twice and went back twice. The last time I came back, I was a food columnist, but they had someone else doing reviews at that time. And honestly, I was a little tired of doing reviews. But the last actual review I wrote was City House had just opened. So I think they've been around for
a while, huh?
15 years.
Yeah.
I think they've celebrated.
Still a great meal.
So yeah, a great place. But that tells you how, and already things were being cut back. The budgets were being cut back. I left the paper for a while, but continued to freelance restaurant reviews until they said one person, one visit. And it's like, I can't do that anymore.
What is the thought process on that? Like and you're a restaurant owner now too.
I'm not an owner.
Well, you're not. Okay. Well, you're a restaurant.
I'm not that
person.
Crazy.
I don't know if the reviews hold as much weight, which we'll get into, is why I think people are more vicious for clickbait. You want to get views, so they write, snarkier kind of comments. Right. I feel Eater for a long time in the beginning was like super snarky and tongue in cheek, and then they turned into like a little bit of a gossip column for a while. Now they're back to like doing proper things. At least here in Nashville, and Chicago is a little bit better. Those are the two markets I can speak of.
Right.
Does the paper understand that this is someone's business? This is a livelihood, that these reviews hold weight, and maybe they don't so much in Tennessee, but let's just do the New York Times for a second.
Yeah.
Because they're the pinnacle of like the restaurant reviewer coming 3-4 times. If you get a great review in the New York Times, your restaurant the next day is going to be sold. That's just the trajectory of how it goes.
Right.
And I think they understand that these are businesses, and there's a line to dance on that also. And maybe reviewers and papers don't look at that. Is that something that's in the forefront of a reviewer's mind?
I mean, if you're a professional, absolutely, right. You recognize what this can do for somebody. Good or bad.
Right.
So it's why you should never be casual or flippant about what you...
I think flippant's a great word.
Or what you write, because that's not fair.
Right.
I don't think I ever put anyone out of business with a bad review that wasn't already in trouble and having major systemic issues in what they do.
Yeah. But I don't think a bad review is going to put anybody out of business.
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't, right.
It shouldn't. And a well-run restaurant will respond, even if they disagree, and they might disagree. They may call me and say, I think you're full of shit about this. And I would always try and say, this is why I said what I said.
Yeah.
This was my experience. This is what I wrote about. I get where you're coming from, but this is why I said what I said. And I think I left with my reputation intact for being fair. That's up to you to ask around.
I think so. Yeah. I mean,
see what people said. And if they're good, they'll address the things that need addressing, and the negative things, they correct or they don't. Where it got interesting was the misunderstanding of what the role of the restaurant critic is, and going back to my audience are consumers. I am a consumer advocate at the end of the day. I'm not a restaurant booster. As much as I love restaurants and chefs, that's not my...
You're not a PR machine for restaurants.
That's not my job.
Right. Yes.
And so I forget which restaurant it was, but the owner said, hey, we took all of this to heart. We're going to address all of these things. And then proceeded to tell me about how their kitchen was laid out and things from functional workflow in the kitchen, which was fascinating to me, really interesting. But I said, I don't care about that because I'm writing for the person sitting there in the seat, and all they know is what they see and experience, what they see and feel, and what's put before them on the plate. The fact that you're working out these logistic issues, they don't care.
Gets lost in the public.
They don't care. It doesn't matter to them.
Right.
Get it right so that their experience is good.
I use my mother as like a bar for it. She goes to a restaurant, and well before I started even cooking and up until recently, they go to a restaurant, they order, they sit down. If things aren't out in 15, 20 minutes, they start wondering why.
Right.
They don't see the restaurant is overbooked and there's 50 people waiting at the door. It's just not something that's in the public eye.
Right.
And then Top Chef came along, which, for good or for bad, it opened up the world to a little bit more of the chef rock star, but it gave a lot of context to what was happening. And I remember, I've told this story before, but I remember she called me out of the blue one day and she goes, who's Joe Robuchon? And I'm like, what? Whoa, what have you been watching? What have you been doing? Like, what have you been watching? And that was the moment where I realized that like the pedestrian person is way more savvy now because of TV, because of articles, because of blogs, because of, the internet. If my mom knows who Joe Robuchon is, it's breaking through to the layperson.
Right.
And I think it's kind of a good thing. And another story is, I have a friend that was a veterinarian, or she went to UC Davis and worked with animals and stuff. And this was 20 years ago, probably now. She said the crocodile hunter, what was his name? Steve Irwin.
Yeah.
She goes, what he did for our industry to open up the general public to know about animals and these type of animals you might see in the wild. And if you see a bat on the ground, don't approach it. But on the flip side to that, like the destruction that this guy did in our industry of these people like wanting to get these exotic animals now, it was like a 50-50 balance, which I feel like some of these TV shows are the same thing. Like, cooking is not a competition.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a competition. And just because you can make gazpacho in a bathtub and you have 10 minutes to do it doesn't mean that it should be done.
Right.
So I feel like that played a lot into getting the restaurant industry where we are now. But I feel lately there's been a lot of cleanup happening of some of these reviews, some of these people that are writing these snarky articles of either the public's kind of over it and they're adjusting their business model, or nobody's reading it anymore.
Well, you hit on a lot of things. I agree 100% that it is what has helped elevate awareness, understanding, why your mom knows who Joel is,
right,
and that kind of thing. Why I look to my nieces and nephews who are in their 20s now, but how they grew up watching shows.
Right. Where we watched Julia Childs,
right.
They're watching
I watched
Chopped.
Graham Kerr.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Who was so far ahead of his time.
Way far
He
ahead.
spoke about seasonality and buying local before, in the 60s.
Yeah, I remember he had a copper oil thing that he used to always use. He cooked in peanut oil all the time. And I was like, as a kid, I'm like, Mom, we got to get peanut oil.
Yeah.
She's like, stop watching TV.
Right. But the flip side is that's where you get that sense of entitlement, that false sense of
I know something.
Expertise.
Yes, expertise.
And that's the problem with that. And people, going on and reviewing everything.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
It is, right.
Where it's gotten everything.
So why did you decide to leave journalism? You did it for so long.
Well, I did, and I thought I was going to ride it out at the Tennessean. I was the food and drink. I was a columnist, which in journalism you either go the editor route, which means you have to move around a lot. to get better, bigger jobs, or you stay local and you work your way up to be a columnist.
Yeah.
I thought, man, I've arrived. This is great. And I got laid off. I mean, that's
no kidding. That's what happened.
Yeah. Gannett was going through, I think I survived 6 corporate layoffs, and I didn't survive the last one. Yeah. And
Wow.
They cut me loose. So
I just don't understand. I mean, there's a lot of things I don't understand about papers these days. I don't understand how a newspaper can't have a food columnist. It'd be like getting rid of the sports columnist.
yeah, I don't either,
It's
because
a public service.
there are some things, and people would complain about this. There's some things that, like the Tennessean, that they just can't do, and that's follow national news.
Yeah.
They just can't. They don't have the staff to do that. Because they used to. Newspapers used to have someone in Washington covering meat. Now, what they can do is have someone who pays attention and then can interpret, what does that mean for me living in Nashville,
Correct.
Tennessee? But 2 of the things that a newspaper should do intensely well, because they are completely local, they can't be done remotely, is cover sports, the local sports scene, and food. They don't. Newspapers used to have cooking sections. Before that, they called them the women's section, which is so
bring that
insulting.
Back. Super.
But the restaurant coverage, they should, because that everybody eats, everyone likes to go out, and I guess ostensibly that I left. They were moving more to roundups.
Roundups are just an easy
Top
thing.
tens.
Yeah, top 10s, yeah.
And you mentioned this too. You said maybe they just don't read them anymore. They don't. People don't read very deeply anymore.
We're just being bombarded with so much media.
The reality is, this was really interesting. Someone asked the founders of Twitter how they chose that character count. And they said they went on TV and they measured the length of the average sound bite. When people started speaking in sound bites for local news or national news, it became this length and cadence that people became comfortable with. And so that they said that was how we chose the character limit for tweets. Now, those sound bites are the story that you're watching where you leave hungry for more. Right. It's like, wow, that was really not particularly well reported. The in-depth story on the news, because they want to hit as much as they can. So there are these short little things. And newspapers moved in that direction. I mean, think of USA Today with the little page of all blurbs.
Just headlines.
So there's that. People not reading as much. And it's why I fought so hard not to have a rating system at the Tennessean. Because the minute you employ that star system, that's all people look at. Even the only way to get them to the bottom of the story is to put the stars at the bottom of the story. But and then we had metrics proving that. When I was in the newsroom, they had installed monitors throughout the entire newsroom, and you could look in real time what stories were doing the best. You could see how many people were in the story, and they had these things now with fairly intelligent reading, so that they knew it wasn't that you had your mom open your story and leave it open on her computer. They could tell if it was scrolling and all. Anyhow, so they were pretty true numbers. And so now you're creating, although they said they didn't want to, it's getting competitive. So now I want more people in my story. And you wonder why you write clickbait headlines. Because you want to at least get them in. And then your job as a writer is to keep them in. So we could literally look at what point most people left your story. So they got to here and then they lost interest or whatever. So you could go, all right, which is powerful information. So I could go in and stick a subheading in there with a new thing to draw people further in.
A pop-up.
And then not even a pop-up,
No.
just a subhead.
Okay.
Just another, after 3 paragraphs, I keep losing them here, and then said, but that wasn't all that happened.
Yeah, right.
Or something stupid
more.
like that to keep them reading more.
Right.
But the most depressing thing to me was if you could keep someone in your story 45 seconds to a minute, that was a home run.
Jesus.
How depressing is that?
It's the attention span of
So
the normal person, I guess.
and then and so the attention spans have changed. So I don't know where the blame lies, and you can only beat your head against the wall so many times before you're realizing people aren't reading long stories anymore. Yeah. And so all of that figures, that coupled with the rise of influencers, social media, user generated, rating systems, it just sort of spelled a death knell for classic reviewing.
Where do you think that the attention span deficit came from? Do you think it was the newspapers and the internet giving you this, or people didn't want to read anymore, a little bit of both?
I think it came from this.
Yeah. It's gambling.
It came
diminishing return.
It came from, it's just, do you want to read something
phone.
long
Yeah,
on that?
Right.
I want something I can look at. I mean,
right.
I think generations of people are going to have thumb arthritis.
Right.
From holding phones and just doing this all day.
So somebody said, I forgot, I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about Elon Musk's chip that he wants to put in your brain I forget what it's called. It could fix spinal cord injuries and stuff. And we're moving towards being part cyborg already. And somebody said, well, we already are, because we constantly have a phone. We have a computer in our hand all the time, even though it's not connected to us.
Right.
We are part cyborg because we're connected to a computer 24/7.
Right.
What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? You grab your phone.
And the designers of the programs, and I know I sound like a crazy old man, but I think I'm fairly self-aware of this. Whether it's a video game or if it's an app, they're designed to be addictive.
To keep you engaged.
Did you
see the documentary?
And I'm just as guilty as anyone.
Yeah.
I've had to step back from going on social or TikTok. And, once the algorithms figure out what you like, it's like, fuck, I've just been lying in bed in a dark room.
It's 2:30 in the morning.
It's 2 in the morning.
And I'm wired.
And what kind of memes did RP Grizzle put up?
Right. Just one more video of a guy getting kicked in the balls. Just one more, man.
And it's just, go to bed.
Right.
Turn it off. Go to bed.
Yeah.
What a waste of time.
Right.
I'm not getting that back in my life. So.
I mean, but that's what they're designed to do.
Right. But you were going to mention an article that.
Oh, no. What was it? The documentary? What was the documentary on Netflix? The Social Network? No, that was the movie. There's a documentary about social media and the phone, and the way these things are designed is to keep you engaged. It's like a slot machine.
Yeah.
So the next thing, the algorithm is immediately. There's been times where I've been on Facebook watching videos and I scroll up a little too far and I see the next video coming up, so I just scroll back down to whatever I was watching, and I scroll again, and that video had changed already because the algorithm had already updated that I was watching this video for 15 seconds, so they're going to show me another one.
Right.
And another one. They're just going to keep... The algorithm updates minute to minute based on how long my thumb is over the cursor or how long I've been on a video.
And it's very annoying if you caught a glimpse of something, go, oh, I want to watch that next, and it's gone already.
Or I see a meme that's really funny and it refreshes and that meme's gone forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sad.
Let's get back to you taking over a soda shop.
So
the Tennessean, so what year was this when he got laid off?
Geez, it's been 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things, I love old places, and my grandparents were in
I
Nashville.
wouldn't call it all. I say nostalgia. You say I like nostalgia.
Legacy, iconic
nostalgia.
places,
Yeah, yeah.
places that help define the fabric of a community. I love those places. I hate to see them disappear.
Arnold's.
Arnold's is one. So one of the things I was looking into investigating is, so I've got this Italian side of my family through marriage way back, the Melfis. Name doesn't mean anything to you, but Nick Melfi came to Nashville in the 1890s. He was from Viggiano, Italy, and he was a fiddle player.
Who was the food critic for the Tennessean then? Just kidding.
Not that part.
Just kidding.
Son of a bitch. Leave that in there.
Yeah, right.
Editor. Motherfucker.
A fiddle player.
Can we swear on this show?
Yeah, definitely, man. Nobody listens to this shit
Right.
anyway, so it doesn't matter.
I've been working on cleaning up my language. So,
Fiddle player.
which reminds me of a funny story. But so he would travel all over the world on cruise ships as orchestras on cruise ships. So he and his brother opened up one of the first chili parlors in Nashville. And Nashville was a chili parlor city.
No kidding.
At the turn of the century. Long before Cincinnati became a chili city.
Or Gertie's in Chicago is a chili thing. Yeah.
So this was a thing. 1898, I think.
Wow.
And so there's this great old photograph of Melfi's Chili Parlor taken probably in the 20s. Since 1898, the man who made chili famous in Nashville. And I always loved that. Melfi's, the chili parlor eventually closed, and Vito Melfi had a restaurant on Division Street. I'll show you a picture because it's cool.
Yeah.
Huge neon sign. It was a drive-in, and you could also eat inside, but it was a drive-in. And he was one of the first people after World War II to bring pizza to Nashville.
No kidding.
When all these people had tried pizza pizza started happening in the U.S. in different markets. So, and then Melfi's closed late 60s, early 70s. But I have fond memories of the drive-in. So, fast forward, the last remaining chili parlor in Nashville is Varallo's. The old one was on Church. That closed when old Mr. Varallo retired. His nephew, Todd, was still running one on 4th Avenue near the arcade. Mm-hmm. Before that, though, there was Melfi's, there was Varallo's, there was Vietti's, there was Petroni's, there were all these Marchetti's, all these great. Nashville had more than a dozen chili parlors. It really was a chili city. So I always loved that. And I said, well, we need to bring that back. Varallo's is the longest operating restaurant in the state of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Varallo's Chili opened up in 1907, I think. There's a point to this whole story. A few years ago, about 4 years ago, Varallo's was for sale. And I thought, man, what I wouldn't love to bring back chili as a thing in Nashville. It's all marketing. It's a huge marketing exercise. Yeah. But you're fighting against, well, people don't eat chili year round. Well, they do in all kinds of other cities, including most of Texas. Mm-hmm. So they will. So you can get around that. And then I talked to Randy Rayburn about it, and he said, I think they're asking too much for the business. And when I say Varallo's, does that ring a bell with you?
No.
So,
but I'm not from here, though.
But you're not, but you've been here long enough.
Yeah, never heard of it.
But his point was, even people who grew up here don't know what Varallo's anymore. So he said, you're going to have to reestablish a category and a name. He said, don't buy it. Why don't you just revive Melfi's and bring back that brand? And plus you can say the original, before hot chicken, there was chili.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I was thinking about it, and then Randy gives me a call, and he said, all right, before you jump in to do something, do you want to get involved with an iconic restaurant that's making a comeback? I go, what is it? And he goes, it's the Elliston Place Soda Shop.
Nice.
Tony Giratana bought it. I go, Tony, the developer? Does Tony know anything about restaurants? He goes, no, he doesn't know anything about restaurants. So he hired me to be the consultant to help. They have to move next door because of lease issues, and they want to bring it back to glory. And I said, I'm in. So that's how I got involved.
Wow.
Against all of my better judgment.
Yeah. Being involved in the other side of the industry.
I've had no small of comeuppance too.
Yeah.
Which delights people like you and all my chef friends who I used to criticize. Not so easy, is it, motherfucker? Tandy Wilson being the first one who Tandy never forgets that in my top, I wouldn't do a best restaurant. I would do my favorite restaurants.
Sure.
And I put City House at number 2, not at number 1. And he never forgave me for that, ever.
What else was on the table for you? What else were you thinking about doing after leaving the Tennessean?
Oh man, I didn't know.
Was it sudden? Like you didn't?
Yeah, it was out of the blue.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I hosted a Tennessean event the night before, and we went out for drinks afterwards because we always knew when cuts were coming.
Yeah.
And you know, it's that black humor. It's like, everyone go home and update your resume.
Yeah, sounds
familiar.
familiar.
Get ready. And then 7 a.m, I got the call from the sweetest woman, Beverly, who's worked for every publisher since the 70s.
Yeah.
Jim, this is Beverly. Ugh. I need you to come in and go straight to HR this morning.
Man.
So I go, no, not me.
Yeah. So what were you thinking about doing?
Well, you know, looking into
a million things went
a
through
million
your mind.
things,
Yeah.
And writing, freelance writing. Though being a freelancer is just
it's a grind.
It's a grind.
Yeah.
You spend more time invoicing and getting work than you do actually doing the work that you do best.
Yeah.
And so that's a grind.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I had tried a few different things. I thought maybe I'll write books. I helped Pat Martin with his book, at least the outline and the title and the structure of it. But again, you're not gonna get rich doing that.
Yeah, not at all.
So this just kind of came along at the right time, and I jumped in, and it's been 3 years now. So,
what do you think is the biggest lesson that you've learned from being a food critic to now operating a restaurant? And not saying like all these things that I wrote or blah, 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 like the restaurant people were always right, but just like as an overview of the last 3 years, I didn't expect this, or I did expect this, but not to this level.
Yeah. I'll tell you where I've learned the most is managing front of the house staff. The economics of serving and keeping people, keeping your good people. I've learned it's hard to teach hospitality. Some people they have it or they don't. But I think the biggest thing is the economics of the kitchen, the economics of food costs, pricing, and labor flow to execute. There's no shortage of great dishes, and there's no shortage of great ideas. But executing them is another thing.
Right.
And I can give you a specific example because there were all these things I wanted to do. I said, Soda Shop has a great opportunity to be like a repository for classic Nashville foods that are gone now. That people say, oh, Ireland steak and biscuits. Man, I miss those. Or Nero's Cactus Canyon had the best hot water cornbread you've ever seen. Or this or that. So two things. One, I said, let's do proper chili here.
You're a chili guy, man. Still
fixated.
Pushing the chili, man.
I still was fixated. So let's do chili parlor chili. We're not going to call it Melfi's because I may need that later. Yeah. But let's do it. And I pieced together from old recipes what I felt was the closest to what Melfi's was, their chili was. Okay. Now it's roasting all your own chili peppers and making your own chili powder.
Making your own chili powder. First things first.
That is so labor intensive.
Yeah.
It is so easy.
It's like making a mole.
It is.
Yeah.
It's so easy to screw it up, to get those chilies just a little too hot, blistered and bitter.
Yeah.
So then I went to a local spice company, and they just couldn't come close to it. And I realized I had to let go of we just didn't have the people to, and I'm thinking, I'll do it myself. And it's like, no, I don't have the time either.
Yeah.
So that was hard because it was really good chili.
Yeah.
So then another thing that I wanted to do, you know how people, they love it when you put something down on the table. It's an old Southern thing too. I mean, old Southern joints used to put down a bowl of white beans, raw onion, and corn cakes. It was just a classic thing. That's
kidding.
When you sat down, that's what you got.
Like a crudité platter.
Yeah. It's like the supper clubs. You know what I'm talking
Yes.
about. The classic Midwestern supper club, which we desperately need one here. So I wanted to do hot water cornbread. It was cheap. I mean, the cost of putting a basket of that down was nothing. So I said, I think this is something we can definitely absorb. It's those little things of lagniappe that people love when they go to a place. We didn't have the fryer capacity to do it.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And they take actually longer to fry than other things in the queue. And so between the French fries, the onion rings, the chicken fingers, the catfish, we didn't have the capacity to do that, to churn out free baskets. And that's just, we can't do it.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. So, I learned, which I knew from writing, when you write something and have to edit it, you may have that paragraph or that line that just, it's great by itself, but it just doesn't work, doesn't fit your word count, whatever. You have to learn to let go of things.
Right.
And you definitely have to do that in a restaurant.
Right. What I learned, the R&D process, this is how I approach over the years of like doing it, is in the initial R&D process, food cost is not an issue. The idea is to create the best possible tasting dish. Doesn't matter how hard it is to eat, doesn't matter what it looks like, it's flavor, best possible delicious dish you can create. Once it comes out of that R&D process, it gets kicked into functionality process. Okay, can 3 or 4 people share this? Can they get the perfect bite if they just run a spoon or a fork all the way through? How are they going to eat it where it's intended to be consumed, where you get a little piece of everything? So then we go back and do some tweaking. And then you usually lose a good portion of the R&D process in that.
Yeah.
And then it gets to the food cost process of, okay, we're going to have to sell this for $47 as an appetizer. Right. How do we bring this down to $12? And then you take away, and you hope that in all that process, you don't shy away from or diminish the dish so much from the original idea.
Right.
And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Right. And that's hard.
It's
very hard to let go of those babies.
For me, it's like, well, every little piece is the detail of what makes it so great.
Yes.
So what are we doing? And then you get down to it and you can't do it anymore.
Tighten up on that backstroke.
There you go. All right.
Yeah, no, it's true. So I learned that. I learned the challenges of dealing with the public in lots of different
The
capacities.
restaurant industry would be so amazing if it wasn't for the people.
Yeah. So, but we talked earlier that I enjoy that part. Though.
Yeah.
I enjoy trying to turn someone around because we don't get it right all the time.
Right. But the fact that there is no, which goes back to the Yelp and everyone's a critic. There is no room for a person, and I guess sort of rightfully so. People are coming out, they're spending their money with you. Money's tight these days.
Right.
Going out to a restaurant, whether it's a restaurant like yours or mine, it's a casual place. I don't think we're an expensive restaurant, but to some people we are.
Right.
And they're choosing to come to us on their anniversary or their month out. They got a babysitter. And if we don't get it right, the lambasting that happens afterwards is there's not a lot of room for restaurants to like sort of get one dish right. It has to be a perfect dining experience for that. Whatever these people created in their minds of what they're going to expect. And sometimes I think the bar is too high. We're not this type of restaurant. This is a very casual place.
Yeah.
This is not a 3-star Michelin experience. Even though we think we're giving great service, I think the product we're serving is great. I don't think it's very expensive for what they're getting. It's hard to get 100 people a night to buy into that scenario. And when it comes to the public, there isn't a lot of wiggle room to sort of get it right. And what we can do is we can backtrack at that particular moment. If somebody complains, there's all these fail safes to get into place. So Matthew goes to the table. We cook them another dish. If they don't want it, we immediately take it off. We buy them a round of drinks if they waited too long. We send on extra dessert. We have to play this cat and mouse game so people can leave happy, so people will come back, and people won't go online to any platform and write a terrible review of us because we got one thing off.
Right. Yeah, that's the cost of kowtowing.
Yes. It was never like this before.
Yeah, is you sometimes just sucking it up.
Yeah.
And making it right, which in the end doesn't cost that much to make it right, but far exceeds the cost of a bad review, no matter how unfair or unrealistic it is.
Not even a bad review of it. People just saying, I think the word of mouth gets a lot better, but also to hopefully win them to come back.
Right.
And I love it with, just last week we put this arugula pesto on. It's a little bit bitter. We couldn't get it right. It was kind of like an a la minute pickup, and it just every time it was different every time. And we were doing it, I think it was Saturday night. We got a couple complaints about it being a little too bitter. We're putting a little too much lemon juice in. It was a little too sour, and then it wasn't seasoned enough. And by like the 5th time, the table of 5 that had been to the restaurant a whole bunch of times, they sent it back and they wanted to order something else. And I brought the new dishes out. And I was like, listen, thanks for the feedback. It was constructive criticism. I appreciate you, sending it back and ordering something else. We took it off the menu, and we're going to go back and tweak it. And I got the response I was looking for. Listen, we love this place. We've been here 100 times. This is the first time we've ever had something bad, and we're here. We're going to come back. We're going to keep trying new things. Don't stop being creative. And that's the response that you want.
It is.
Not the response of, oh, no, everything's fine. No, it was great. And, okay, can I get you anything else? Can I buy your own?
Right.
No, we're fine. And then the next day, 1-star review. This was terrible. But they don't say the manager came to the table. He took it off the bill. He brought us out free dessert. Nobody ever says that the restaurant rectified the situation. They just focus on the one thing that they didn't like. And there's all these things that we did to win them back over. And we thought we did our job. It's tough.
It is.
Yeah.
And I will say, I've also learned not to engage online.
Yeah.
Even some negative.
I don't even read the reviews. Matthew does.
Yeah. I have to.
Yeah.
But I only engage when I know that situation. I know we made it right. I know we made every effort to do this, and I will go on and respond and say,
Correct.
I'm disappointed that you still feel this way, and hope you give us a chance. We did this. because I will point that out.
Right.
But only if I'm confident in that knowledge. I rarely have that knowledge, unfortunately. And then you're right. And then sometimes we get a lot of people from the hospital community. And it's part of
is right there, right?
Yeah, it's been part of our DNA for 85 years. We screwed up a to-go order. We left some things out. We just royally screwed it up. And the guy wrote a disappointing review. I responded immediately, found out they were here on vacation. His daughter became very ill and she's in Vanderbilt Children's Hospital right now. I just go, I'm so very sorry. Because he wrote back after I responded, and we brought them food the next night, and T-shirts and hats and extra dessert and more food than they could deal with. And he went back on and amended his review. But I didn't do it because of that. At the end of the day, you want it right.
Right.
It's what hospitality.
I was just going to say, that's hospitality.
It's the root of hospitality.
Right.
And that's what makes the job so rewarding and frustrating, when you know you're doing everything you can to make it right.
Do you think hospitality is lost?
I think it's not part of our general culture anymore.
Yeah.
And I say that if you travel to Latin America or the Middle East, and you go to someone's home, that's you feel what true hospitality is, because it's still part of their culture. I can give you a brief example. My wife was teaching a Somali immigrant. No, I'm sorry, not a Kurdish immigrant. The boy's sister had passed away, and Suzanne took him out to, just gave him a little extra love. He was dealing with some stuff. When she brought him home, the family, in a very small apartment, very humble, had set up the coffee table with cookies, with food, with coffee service, to say thank you so much for taking care of our son. I go, those are people who understand the core meaning of hospitality. And it's not our culture anymore.
Right.
And there's the Tony, what is his name? Maniscalco, the comedian, very Italian comedian. He does this.
Sebastian.
Yeah. He does this funny thing about people coming over.
Yeah, right.
We've got company.
Yeah.
He does.
Get the Entenmann's.
Get the Entenmann's coffee
Right.
cake. Everyone get ready. You don't touch that. That's for guests.
There's soaps. Put out fresh. Yeah.
And now it's the doorbell rings. It's like, everyone get down.
Yeah. What do you want, weirdo?
Who is it? Who's at the door?
Right.
Why are they here? It's so true, and it's so funny. But it's sad that we don't go calling on people, to use the old-fashioned word.
Right.
We don't go calling. We don't go visiting. No one does that anymore. Right. And
I think we do it during the holidays. I think there's 3 times a year where everybody's hospitable. Thanksgiving, Christmas, and probably 4th of July.
Yeah.
You have a party, you set everything up.
Right.
Like, that's just hospital. How many times, have you invited someone over and had dinner at your house? Or, my brother Matthew, I used to do these, Sunday dinners because I moved here and I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
So I would just throw dinner parties at my house on Sundays, and I'd invite totally random people that I was like met or friends with. And he goes, we should start doing that again. That was a lot of fun. And I don't know. I couldn't tell you last time I was invited over to someone's house for dinner. But that wasn't like a holiday or a birthday or
right.
And you go there and you're like, okay, how long do I have to be here for? Yeah. Like, okay, well, we've been here 40 minutes. Is that long enough? Can we go now?
Right.
To do what? To go back to the house to be on my phone. You know, that's it. So, I'm a victim of it also, So
I think so then you get into, from a hiring standpoint, finding people who get that still.
Right.
Whether it's because it was part of their
can't teach
culture.
it. Yeah.
No, you can't teach it, but you can bring it out in the people who innately understand it, but maybe didn't grow up with it.
I think Colby's at the door. You want to go get that real fast? Yeah. So we'll edit that out. What is your tricks or any advice you have for retaining staff?
I mean, take care of them.
Well, pay them well. Pay them obviously
Pay them
what
well,
you can,
and
right? Without bankrupting the restaurant, right?
Right, and that's been the big correction that's come out of COVID is how salaries have crept up significantly because so many people woke up during COVID and said, this job sucks and they don't pay me enough to do this anymore. I'm going to find something else to do.
Or this job is the source of all of my stress and mental illness and heartache.
Right.
I don't want to do this anymore.
Exactly.
Right.
Heartache, mental illness, addiction, stress, all of the above. Yeah, it's a hard business. So, I think just trying to know everybody, know who they are, not just their name, but you become it. It's a cliche, but a family of employees, and try and treat people with equal respect.
Right.
That gets hard sometimes when correction is needed in the stress of a busy service. For us, with a line at the door, people waiting to be seated, and the kitchen is behind, and mistakes always will get made.
Right.
And so trying to make sure people know that this is not personal. It's just
that's a tough line.
In the heat of the stress and adrenaline of service, things can happen. And so to try and make sure you make it right after the fact or whatnot. And finding out who can take that and who can't. Not everyone rebounds from that.
Right.
Some people do take it personally.
Right.
And so you have to find out who those people are and whether they can handle it. Craig, our GM, thrives on the adrenaline rush of a busy service. He loves it.
Yeah.
I don't.
Really?
It just raises my anxiety level because I know I can't do everything. It's that Virgo. I can't do everything as well or perfectly.
Perfectly. Yeah.
As I want to.
Yeah.
They need help polishing silver. I can tell you, no one in that place polishes the silver as well as I do.
Yeah. Right.
And then you realize you're going to get silverware rolled that may have spots on it or something. Yeah. And then letting go of that because I strive for the best, but I also have to go, we're a diner, okay?
Right.
Not all of that has to be perfect.
Right.
So, but keeping them, keeping the good ones, and Craig always talked about this, and Randy Rayburn did too, is your servers will let you know who's not measuring up.
Right.
They do a pretty good job of voting people off the island.
That's great.
Themselves.
Pack up your knives.
Without you having to do it.
Yeah. Well, we're a tipped pooled house restaurant.
Okay.
Even the cooks at night are in it, and it's we've really, I think Matthew has really instilled since day one of this is a one team, one dream. Everybody does all the work, no matter what you're asked to do, you're doing it, and everybody's responded to that.
Yeah.
Like, I need you to, go to the bathroom and tidy. Yeah, no problem. You run this food, no problem. The cooks run this food. Go pour waters. I'm out there running food. And we have this kind of like team mentality of this is the work that needs to get done today and nobody's beneath it or that's not my job kind of thing. And I think it works for us because it was set up from the beginning, day one. It wasn't like something we had this system, and now all of a sudden we're doing this system, and some people aren't bought into it. Everyone has bought into it, and that's why it works.
That's good. Well, and it also works because they see it happening top down.
Yes.
So they have to see that. I know, like, I'm not a good server.
Me either.
I
shouldn't even be out there.
I should never take orders. Right. Okay. But the servers I will be pre-bussing and bussing tables and wiping tables, which is murder on my 2 bad discs. But they'll see me do that. I'll polish silverware. I'll roll silverware. When we're in the weeds, I'll step in and do anything. I'll make milkshakes, which I do enjoy. I'll run things. The only thing that I really don't like to do is expo, because again, it gets my anxiety level.
It's chess.
It's hard. It's just
so hard.
It's
playing chess with a checkers mentality.
Yeah, I just want to shut down and curl up in a ball so they don't put me on expo anymore. But I had to learn it. But so to do it successfully, you need that top down, so they see you doing it. At the same time, though, I think good managers run the risk of doing too much.
Agreed. Yeah.
Because if I'm doing it because I'm sure you're the same. You see it, you do it.
Do it. That's it. Yeah.
If something needs to be done, you just do it, and rather than delegating it to the person who should be doing the silverware or whatever it is. And so yeah, I freely admit I fall into that trap, and it's like, well, so and so's not going to roll silver as long as I keep doing it.
Right. Well, Jim will do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn that.
Right on.
Yeah.
Jim, this has been great. Thanks for sitting down with us.
Thank
People
you.
want to find you and come visit you. Where do we go?
Elliston Place Soda Shop, 2105 Elliston Place,
Nashville, Tennessee.
What's
the Instagram?
EP Soda Shop.
There it is.
Yeah.
Go see
Come
Jim roll silverware.
Yeah.
Thanks for sitting down with
us.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I think that we should do this.
You got to come back.
We need to.
There's more stuff we got to talk
about. A whole series. We didn't even touch on.
First recurring guest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim.
All right. Sure thing.